Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and I've got a little neck knife for you today. It's the Dart, D-ART. This is an O-step hill design made by Civivi. You've probably seen it around before already. It's got a little chain. Yeah, there'll be close-up pictures really soon. And it's just a light little all-steel neck knife. It's like a scalpel meets a dart, and this is their love child. You want to see more about this? Come on down to the tabletop and we're going to take a good close look at this knife. I have temporarily misplaced the box that this came in, so I don't remember if this comes in a Civivi pouch or not. I think I did an unboxing with this, but for some reason I just can't recall that right now. So somebody in the comments down below is going to say if this comes with the pouch or not, because you guys know. Let's take a look at this thing. It's a little knife. Like, look at the size of my hand. You know, it's just a little thing in here. We've got Kydex, 6 rivets put it together, and we've got this black bead chain. I believe it's just, you know, a silver grayish bead chain if you get the other version of this knife. We'll talk about that in a minute. The sheath, flat on this side. We've got some texture on this side to help hold it in. And there's the knife. Now, just talking about this sheath a little bit, it even has a drain hole in it. I guess it's just standard practice to put drain hole in these, but if you use this as a neck knife, water's not going to egress out of that hole. Like, that's going to be up. The knife blade, since it's mostly symmetrical, it's symmetrical enough that you can put it in either way. So right now I've got the cutting edge here, turn around the cutting edge there. Either way, it goes in no problem and holds with the same kind of retention. Let me grab those. There, grab those beads. See, it's just a nice snug hold. Quite thin. We're going to go over those measurements in just a little while. It's time to look at the knife though. We've got the Civivi logo here on the handle. On the spine of the handle, it says O-step hill design. Flip it over and turn it this way again, and very lightly, it's D2 right there. So you can get this knife in this black wash, or you can get it with a bead blast finish. Now, I don't like D2 that's been bead blasted. It's like asking for corrosion. So I chose the black wash version. We've got sort of a ribbon kind of style here. It's like, piece of ribbon was folded over itself. And so you've got the line coming up here, and then it comes around, and as if it comes over the other side, and then comes down again. So it's kind of a cool styling that we have right here. Nice big hole down the middle of it, and we've got some jimping at the end of the handle on both sides, and then some jimping just before the blade on both sides. So you can get a pretty sure grip on this thing, even though it is pretty tiny. My hands are just into the extra large range, so that might help you a little bit with the size of this thing. I found, holding it this way, finger on the spine, I could do some delicate work if I wanted to, and packages, all kinds of stuff, opens pretty easily with this. We've got a full flat grind. We've got some swedges on the false edge side, if you will. Fairly thin flat side on there, and a very pointy tip. That's a pretty small angle. This thing goes into stuff pretty easily, like a dart. It really goes in easily. Very light. Some little touches. You can see just a little bit of milling marks inside that end of the handle right there, which is kind of cool. Just a nice little touch right there, just a little added something. And of course the 2 lines milled back here. It's just well designed. I think it looks great. When I first saw this thing, I had very, very high hopes for it. The question is, how well does it perform? Because of how poorly it was sharpened and how thick it is behind the grind, it does not cut all that well. It pierces just great. Now, if you're going to use this, if you just want this, to puncture things, sure, it's going to do that just fine. With it being such a narrow blade here, and it comes fairly thin, it's not a super strong tip. So if that's what you're looking for, this knife isn't it. It's a small knife. It's somewhat delicate at the tip. and it's too thick. I'll talk about the grind angles. I'll give you all the measurements a little bit later on, but the grind angles on this thing, it's pretty blunt. It's not like a sharp edge like I want on here. Now, halfway through this video, I'm going to sharpen it, but right now what you can see is the factory edge. And so you can see that that factory edge is fairly narrow this way, along there. The sheath has been holding up quite well. I did notice there's just a little bit of a nick here on the side of the sheath and right there. It's like the fit and finish, just a slight bit off right there compared to the rest of it, where, you know, they put it together and then they just sort of buffed the edges and made it look nice. I have worn this a few times, but it had these marks right out of the box. What's the price of this knife? At White Mountain Knives, it's listed at $49. They've got the black wash in stock right now. The Bead Blast one, you're going to have to put yourself on the wait list for it. Take off 10% with my coupon code CCE, and this thing is now $44.10. So that's pretty fair. Amazon has it for $46.75, so a few bucks more if you want to go to Amazon and get it there. And I couldn't find it in any Canadian store. But a fixed blade like this, my Canadian friends, you'll have no problem getting this to come into Canada. It's legal to import and have in Canada, no problems. And so White Mountain Knives can ship this to you. Some of you might be aware that O-Step Hell has got another little scalpel type knife that was released this year. And that's by Cancept. This is the Cancept Hex. This guy's 14C28N, which I prefer over D2 as well. It's around $42 before your discount. But this guy's got an even worse edge. It's a whole lot thicker behind the grind than this guy is. So if you were thinking that this might be, better, it's just a thicker, heavier, chunkier kind of knife. And I'll be doing the review of this before too long. Nutshell, I'm a bit disappointed with that edge. I'm going to have to sharpen this guy way down to a smaller angle as well. I've sharpened it and I pulled it across my strop, 5 times on either side, and we've got a beautiful edge there. I do have a custom knife sharpening business if you do want to get knives sharpened, and I can do super edges. I just wanted to get a nice sharp edge on this. It cuts like crazy now. This is stunning how well it cuts. And, getting a little knife like this in your hands, you can do some super precise stuff with a knife like this. Let's do the sizes, dimensions, and that stuff. How much does this knife weigh? 15 grams. That's 0.53 of an ounce. The sheath, it's 16 grams. That's 0.56 of an ounce. Together, that's including the chain, 31 grams, 1.09 ounces. Very light indeed. The sharpness from the factory, 315 bests. That's just terrible. That's really, really bad. The sharpness right now, 25 bests. That's 25 grams of pressure to cut through some monofilament standardized. If you don't know how I measure the sharpness, I've got a whole video about that. They've got machines that you can buy that you can test sharpness with. So watch that video. It's going to be linked up here in the corner and at the very end of this video. And below in the video description and in the comments. Just like all the other information will be in those places as well. Dimensions. First off, the sheath. The thickness of the sheath here, 6.5 millimeters, which is 0.256. So just the tiniest bit over 1/4 of an inch thick at the thickest spot. The cutting edge length, 41.6 millimeters, 1.82 inches. Blade length, well, I didn't know where to measure the blade length, so I didn't give you a blade length. The thickness of the steel, and that's in the handle as well, 2.93 millimeters, 0.1155 of an inch. The depth of the blade, that's this measurement, the widest point right here at the heel of the blade, 12.5 millimeters, 0.492 of an inch. How thick is it behind the grind? From the factory, it was 0.58 millimeters. That's 22.5 thousandths of an inch. Like I said, that's thicker than I'd like it to be. And this guy's a lot thicker than that yet. The grind angles. This is what I mentioned before. This side was actually sharpened fairly consistently, 23.8 degrees. That's not super terrible. This side started at 32.2, went to 30.6. That's 31.4 degrees of angle on this side. 1.6 degrees of angle change along those less than 2 inches. So yeah, it was poorly sharpened. I did it 17 degrees per side, and like I said, it just cuts wonderfully now. I don't show cutting demonstrations in my videos because so much of how well a knife cuts is about the human being handling the knife. And I've got other reasons as well. I've got a whole video about that as well, but why I don't show cutting. Back to the measurements. The handle length. Okay, so measured from the end of the cutting edge to the end of the handle, 90.4 millimeters, which is 3.56 inches. The handle depth, that's this measurement, the widest point, 14.6 millimeters, 0.575 of an inch. The grip area, so between my thumbs, it's roughly 7.5 centimeters, about 3 inches of grip, which is a fair bit. The total length of this knife, 126.2 millimeters, which is 4.97 inches. And with the sheath, once it's in there, that total length, 136 millimeters, 5.37 inches. So that's the dimensions. So what are my thoughts on this? What do I think of it? Is it worth the price? In a nutshell, my answer is yes. I like this. I'm not that fond of these bead kind of chains, especially if you get the black version. You can see, every third or fourth or fifth chain has got some of the coating rubbed off of it, so it glints a little bit. It's not all that comfortable around the neck. I prefer paracord with the snap, breakaway snaps, so I can always do that on here if I want to. I'll probably be keeping this knife. Ostap Hell is my favorite designer, so there's that. So the chain could be better, but at this price point, I don't mind that at all. The retention of it's really good. I like that they made it ambidextrous, that it can go in either way. You can put your cutting edge to that side or to that side, and it just works just fine putting it in. Holds nice and tight, so that's good. The blade black wash is much preferred over bead blast D2 in my opinion, because D2, you bead blast, you're just creating the starting point, sights for rust to start. So badging's nice and small like Civivi always does, and yet all the information you want is on there. So that's good. The jimping's nice. It's a nice light little knife. You've got over 1 3/4 inches, like 1.82 inches of blade. You can do an awful lot of cutting with this. You can use it for art, like the name says, art. But it can do a lot of minor EDC tasks. It's long enough to, you could even use this thing to take apart an apple if you wanted to in your lunch. It's just, as long as your apple's not too huge. It's got a lot of everyday uses. And the attention to detail, like the tiny little stuff right there, those little milled things in there, it just looks nice. Better than it would if it was just flat. It's just the nice little touches make me happy. I do wish it was a tiny bit thinner behind the grind, but at least it's not crazy like this. Like this is super thick behind the grind. If you're looking for a knife like this and you're thinking between these two, for my money, I like this one better. I do prefer the steel here, and I think this one's a tiny bit cheaper, but I like this knife better. Comfortable in hand, secure grip, and you can do an awful lot with it. So there you go. The Civivi Dart Ostap Hell design. Thank you very much to my ongoing supporters, those of you who send me money monthly through either Patreon or YouTube memberships. I appreciate your help an awful lot. Anybody else wants to join in and help out, that'll be just great. Until next time, remember, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.